Welcome everybody to the second season of the Moose Trail. I'm your host, Chris the Moose Johnson, and today we got a very packed episode. That's right, 30 minutes of the Moose Trail. It's going to be coming up with Will Lewin with the NCAA football rankings. We got Jake Gruwell with the Heisman Watch, and then we also have Kyle Sparrow with fantasy football. Today's going to be an awesome day. Stay tuned, and let's get right into it.
Thank you, Moose, and welcome everybody to the first edition of the Hot Hierarchy. I am your host, Will Lewin, and what the Hot Hierarchy is essentially just a week-by-week breakdown of the college football AP poll and continuously going to be the college football playoff poll and my personal opinions on what it should be and how it can be changed in order to better suit the college football lifestyle that we see every week. Now, to get straight into things here, we're going to talk about teams ranked 11 through 25 here in week 7. Leading the charge is going to be the Iowa State Cyclones after their dominant win against Baylor this last weekend, and right below them is a questionable Notre Dame in that spot. I feel like they're just a little bit too low in the rankings. Texas A&M, big win over number 9 Missouri last week. Boise State with a dominant win and, message and trend-setting win against Utah State. UNLV looking to do the same thing as they have now been bounced out of the rankings after losing to Syracuse. We've also got teams like Missouri and Michigan still in it, barely in it though, but I do still feel like they're a little bit too low. We're going to get into the Hot Hierarchy rankings right here. Number 11 going to be leading things off at the charts. It's going to be Tennessee at the top after suffering that brutal loss to Arkansas. NCAAF sees a little bit more value in them than I do, but some questionable games in the season so far for the Volunteers has them outside of the top 10 for me. Then we've got all the teams with the bye weeks. We've got BYU, Utah, Oklahoma, and Kansas State going to be making up the middle of the pack, basically. One of the things that I kind of hone into when it comes to these rankings is when it comes to the bye weeks, you want to try and group them up as much as possible. As you can see here, they've kind of got them scattered around a little bit. You've got BYU, LSU, Notre Dame all together, but then you've got Utah over here, then Oklahoma, Kansas State down here, and then now you've got Texas A&M with a bye week and Indiana with a bye week, including SMU and Michigan also with bye weeks as well. So trying to really, keep everything together and keep everything nice and organized so it's really easy to go through these rankings is how I feel the AP poll and the college football playoff needs to take into consideration, as those bye weeks are very important. Not really any reason to move teams down or up, just either staying the same or replacing the teams that lost in front of them. We've got Missouri not quite as far down, as well as Michigan above them. I do feel like Michigan are the better team. Missouri have struggled against teams like Kentucky as well, not only Texas A&M, whereas Michigan have been a dominant force. They played a rough Washington team, playing them in Seattle, not easy either, but they've got a tough schedule ahead of them, as well as playing the big game against Ohio State, so we'll see how they do then. We've got teams like Pitt, Navy, USC still in my rankings, even though they lost to Minnesota over the weekend, and also Army making an impact as well in these rankings, not just Navy. I've got both of the academy schools, excluding Air Force, of course. Texas A&M finally making it back into the rankings for me. They weren't in the rankings for me last week. Finally in there this week. Great win against Missouri. And then UNLV right there at the bottom. Again, a brutal loss against Syracuse, but some questionable officiating. I feel like they don't really drop out of the top 25, especially when you take into consideration all the one-loss teams you kind of see across the board. So definitely questionable decision-making there when it comes to the AP poll, and the reason why I have UNLV still in the rankings there. Now we're going to move on to who these teams are playing next week. Again, we've got Tennessee taking on Florida, Oklahoma and Texas going down in the Red River rivalry, and then USC and Penn State should be a very interesting game as well. USC at home, coming off, again, a brutal kind of trip over to Minnesota. Terrible loss against the Golden Gophers. I think they'll have a bounce back spot here against Penn State. Penn State looking to itch their way up the top 10 as we further move into today's program. We're now going to talk about the teams on the block. These are going to be the teams just outside of the top 25 for me, barely missing out, or maybe they're in one rankings and not the other. Either they're in my rankings or the NCAAF rankings, and they're just not in each other's rankings. Now, the first team that we are going to talk about on the block is going to be Navy. They are in my rankings. They're not in the NCAAF rankings. They've got a dominant win against Air Force over the weekend, and also important wins against UAB and Memphis as well. Memphis were looking to make their way up the AP Top 25, but ended up getting stopped right here by Navy and haven't had much success either. Now the next team is going to be the other academy school. It's going to be Army. They're coming off of a great win against Tulsa this last weekend, as well as playing two Owl schools in Temple and Rice. That's not to mention that they also played FAU. Now we've got SMU. SMU 5-1 on the season so far. They're coming off of a dominant win against Louisville at Louisville, who are number 22 in the ranking. And with a 12-team playoff format this season, it's anybody's game. Louisville definitely had a shot, but not so much anymore as SMU is able to get that win. Now here's the next team. UNLV rivals, almost rivals. We'll say UNR's our rivals, but Boise State, when it comes to competition, this is the team to look out for right here. And they're on the block for me. They are in the NCAAF rankings, but the only reason why they're in those rankings, they did lose to Oregon by 3 points. AP poll looking at that as a valuable win. I don't think so. I think they caught Oregon on a bad day. We saw Idaho not really, get beat by that much against Oregon. It wasn't until Oregon went to Corvallis and played Oregon State that we actually saw the true form Oregon Ducks that we're used to seeing. So I think catching a good team on a bad day doesn't necessarily get you ranked, but nonetheless, that's where Boise State is now. Coming off of a great win against Utah State, UNLV looking to replicate that success this weekend as they travel over to the Utah State school and face the Aggies this Saturday. And then they do have that impressive win against Washington State as they were trying to make a name for themselves a couple of weeks ago, as well as a cupcake game in Portland State. Now the last team on the block is going to be Texas A&M. Again, Texas A&M going to be middle of the pack in the 11 through 25 rankings in the AP poll. But for me, they're only barely making their way back. I can't help but keep looking back to that Notre Dame game and just a brutal performance by the Aggies overall. I don't think that necessarily shows how well the team is, but that impressive win against Missouri is something to look out for, and the Aggies do seem to be getting hot right now, especially beating Arkansas, who beat Tennessee over the weekend as well. So look out for Texas A&M. I think they're finally bouncing back after that loss to Notre Dame and looking to try to make their way up the rankings. Now we're going to talk about the top 10. Again, we're going to go into the NCAAF rankings first. Leading the pack at number 1 is going to be the University of Texas. Right behind them is Ohio State, then Oregon, then Penn State, and then Georgia. Miami going to make its way up the rankings in a close win against UC Berkeley, but a win nonetheless in the eyes of the AP poll. And then we've got Alabama and Tennessee not quite out of the top 10, even though they just lost their previous games against Vanderbilt and against Arkansas respectively. But now they're still in the top 10 according to the NCAAF. Now the big game to look out for this week is going to be that Oregon-Ohio State game, number 2 against number 3 at Autzen Stadium in Eugene, Oregon. It's going to be on at 4:30 on Saturday. Should be a great game and definitely depict who might win the Big Ten championship this year. But if we look over to the hot hierarchy, you will see a bit of a difference, especially with those 1 through 4 spots. Hit me with it. That's right. I've got Penn State over Oregon. Oregon not with a great performance against Michigan State this week, but Penn State with an amazing performance against UCLA at home. On top of that, Georgia still climbing, Ole Miss climbing. Now Miami, this is where I disagree the most. You can't beat a non-football school by a point and move up in the rankings. That's just not how it works. And when you look at Miami's week last week against Virginia Tech, didn't really comfortably slide into a win there either. Miami are rocky right now. Doesn't mean they're out of the picture. They're still undefeated, as you can see, at 6-0. They've got a bye week coming up, so hopefully they'll be able to recharge their batteries, get everything set, and have everything figured out by the time we get closer to those kind of college football playoff rankings, and especially when we get to that top 12 team bracket. That's going to do it this week for the hot hierarchy. I've been your host, Will Lewin. We're going to send it over to Jake, who's talking about the Heisman.
Thanks, Will. Welcome to Heisman Watch, where we take a look at the NFL's future stars at the college level and determine which of the sport's best athletes will come home to take the Heisman Trophy. With 6 weeks down in the college football season, the storylines are already starting to become clear. The players who were expected to shine have shown, but down in the lowly Mountain West, a certain running back is rushing up the charts. Without further ado, let's take a look at this week's Heisman Watch Top 3. Coming in at number 3, we have the talented two-way star from Colorado, Travis Hunter. Hunter is already at the top of the wish list for NFL teams as a guy who can make an immediate impact on offense and on defense. He is by far the most versatile player in college football, where he has been non-stop. Through the bye week, he has racked up over 500 yards with 6 touchdowns, which has been extremely impressive enough to land him third on my rankings. Coming in at number 2, we head down to the U, where Cam Ward has put Miami back in the spotlight for the first time in decades. Ward is coming off an instant classic game where he led the Hurricanes to a 25-point miracle comeback against the Cal Bears. This is nothing new for the quarterback, however, as multiple times this season, he has led Miami to a late-game victory. So far through the season, Ward has built up a QB rating of 91.2, making him nearly automatic with the ball, along with 20 touchdowns and over 2,000 passing yards, which makes him by far the best quarterback in the league. Normally, I would say Ward is a lock for this year's award already, until a certain running back has rushed his way to the top of my rankings this week. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, right here from our Mountain West Conference, Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty has started out this year having no odds to win the Heisman, but now sits as the favorite at most sportsbooks here in the Valley. And it sure shows in his performance, as Jeanty is on his way to a possible record-breaking season with the Broncos. Through 5 games, the junior has accumulated 1,031 yards on the ground with 16 touchdowns. For comparison, the last Heisman-winning running back, Derrick Henry, heard of that guy, only had half of the rushing yards and touchdowns that Jeanty has had at this point in the year. It has been incredible to see this walking highlight reel take snaps on Saturdays, and with half a season to go, there is a very good chance that we will see Barry Sanders' rushing record finally get broken. So there you have it, football fans. Stay tuned to the Moose Trail, as next week we'll reveal another top 3 for this Heisman watch. Once again, I am Jake Ruel. Thank you so much for watching. Now we're going to toss it back over to you, Kyle.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Kyle Sparrow, and welcome to Sparrow's Sensational Fantasy Breakdown, where we're going to be looking at this week's fantasy upsides, downsides, players may have gotten injured, and yeah, let's hop right into it. So first off, we got Josh Allen, who is the number 5th fantasy QB in the league right now. He had a bit of an off game against the Houston Texans, only completing 9 for 30 of his passes, throwing for 131 yards and rushing for 51 yards, throwing 1 touchdown as well. This is uncharacteristic for Josh Allen. He normally makes the big plays, but I would not worry. He is going up against an AFC East divisional opponent, the New York Jets, next week. He is projected 18.1 points against them. Therefore, I would not be too worried if I was Josh Allen owners in fantasy. Moving on, we have Jaden Daniels. He is the number 2 fantasy quarterback in Week 6. This guy has commanded this offense. I mean, you look at him, he's a rookie. I would not be surprised if he wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. He is very poised in the pocket. He can run, he can pass, he can do it all. He has 19.72 fantasy PPR points last week. 238 yards passing, 1 touchdown, and he rushed for 82 yards. He is playing a very tough Baltimore defense, but is yet still projected 22.3 points against that Baltimore defense. He is looking dangerous as the Commanders look to have a complete team with Terry McLaurin and Brian Robinson in the backfield. And again, he's thrown for 238 yards, and he can rush. He can do everything. So if I were him, he's moved up a bit in the fantasy rankings for quarterbacks. I would start him. He's an obvious start. Next, we have Nico Collins for the receiving. Number 2 ranked fantasy wide receiver, guys. 33.1 points against the Jags a couple weeks ago. In the game against the Buffalo Bills, C.J. Stroud threw a 64-yard pass. He was injured. He has a hamstring injury. He is listed as week-to-week and questionable. If I were you, he's projected 0.0 points for this next week. You're going to have to try and move around your rosters, guys. Because of Nico Collins being injured, you have Tank Dell, very speedy receiver on that Texans offense. They also have Stephon Diggs. Joe Mixon returns. Therefore, if he's out for 1 to 2 weeks, maybe pick up these players if they're available on the waiver wire, and hopefully he is back soon. Next, we have Lamar Jackson, number 1 fantasy ranked quarterback. If you drafted him in your 1st round or 3rd round, whatever you drafted him, he was explosive against the Cincinnati Bengals. He put up 348 yards passing, 4 passing touchdowns, and he rushed for only 55 yards, which is uncharacteristic for Lamar. He usually rushes for a lot more. Beat the Bengals in an OT thriller via a missed kick by Evan McPherson. He's projected 22.3 points against this Commanders defense. So therefore, Washington Commanders Jaden Daniels versus Lamar Jackson's Baltimore Ravens should be an exciting one. Lots of fantasy points going to be there. Then we move on to the other side of that Baltimore and Cincinnati game. We got Joe Burrow, number 4 ranked fantasy quarterback after that phenomenal performance against Baltimore. 33.78 fantasy points last week. Suffered a heartbreaking loss, as I said before, in overtime against the Ravens via that missed field goal, and then Derrick Henry takes it to the goal line, and Justin Tucker kicks the winner. He put up 392 yards passing, 1 interception, and he threw 5 touchdowns. He has Jamar Chase back. Jamar Chase is now in full effect. As Jamar Chase, he had like 40-something fantasy points. So definitely look forward to Joe Burrow's rise to stardom once again. Moving on, we have a Brian Thomas Jr., rookie receiver for Jacksonville. He has emerged as that wide receiver 1, as this was his first game over 100 yards. Put up 5 receptions for 122 yards and 1 touchdown. 23.2 fantasy points against the Colts. He is a rookie. He only rises from here. He is projected 13.5 points against a tough Chicago defense, which is a tough matchup. But with him emerging as that wide receiver 1, you should look forward to starting him a lot more in your leagues. Next, another rookie. We got Caleb Williams, really the number 1 pick. We expected him to average this many fantasy points the entire season, but had a breakout performance last week. Breakout performance. He threw for 304 yards, 2 touchdowns, and had 34 yards rushing. 23.56 fantasy points against Carolina. Yes, Carolina defense couldn't really contain him, and he threw a couple touchdowns to DJ Moore. Now you're starting to see the number 1 pick from USC start to rise to the occasion as that number 1 pick. Next, we have Brock Bowers, another rookie, who is the number 1 ranked fantasy tight end. 8 receptions, 97 yards, 1 touchdown, 23.7 fantasy points last week against Denver. He is playing a Pittsburgh defense that is on the rise. He's projected only 12.3 points against that Pittsburgh defense. Expect him to boom throughout that game, as now Davante Adams, very questionable to play for the Raiders. You have Brock Bowers, who is an elusive tight end. He will get out of he can block, he can run routes, he can do anything. Next, switching over to running backs. We have Alvin Kamara, the number 1 ranked fantasy running back. Up against KC, their defense is very good. They have interior D-line, Chris Jones. They also have a very good secondary. Put up only 12.6 fantasy points with 11 carries for 26 yards. Had 40 yards receiving, though, but at the same time, keep in mind, 44 points against Dallas in week 2. He definitely has that potential to boom. So, therefore, wouldn't be worried about him. Maybe had an off game. Saints had an off game as well, losing 13-26 against the Chiefs. And finally, we have Saquon Barkley. Wanted to focus more on the Eagles this time because they are coming off a bye week. They play Cleveland this week. Number 3 fantasy running back, 13.6 points against Tampa Bay. Yes, that was an off game. Tampa Bay defense, or Tampa Bay in general, rising to the occasion. You're starting to see Baker Mayfield get more in his zone. I think he is an automatic start. He is projected 19.2 points against this Cleveland defense. Yes, they do have Myles Garrett. Yes, they do have a couple other pieces. But keep in mind, Saquon Barkley has that big play potential as well as very elusive back. And he showed it. He had 33.6 fantasy points against the New Orleans Saints. So he definitely look out for a boom coming with the Cleveland Browns. That is all from Sparrow's sensational fantasy breakdown. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you so much, Kyle, for sending it right back to me. This is going to be a good end of the episode. We're going to be knocking out the rest of how the season's gone for everybody, where it's going to be going, what our predictions are. So first, let's talk about the teams. Let's recap this season. First, we got the NFC East, or the NFC Least, as a lot of people like to call it. The Eagles have been struggling this year. They went against a couple of hard teams, beat the Packers. Beat the Saints, not too well though, could have done better. Lost to the Buccaneers, they need to do better. They came off a bye week. We'll see what they can do this upcoming weekend. They have an offensive rank of 12. Their defensive rank is the 23rd best in the league. The Commanders are 4-1 with a rookie quarterback. That's right, Jayden Daniels, who I said looked like Randall Cunningham. Yeah, he looks like Randall Cunningham. Double check the footage again. He is an amazing quarterback, super accurate, super fast, has a cannon of an arm. Ranked 3rd offense, 17th defense. The Commanders are a monster house of a team, but they're going against a really good team this week too. They're still 4-1. Now, we're going to be going over to the NFC North, the strongest division in football. You heard me right. The strongest division in football right now is the NFC North. I didn't think I was going to say that at this point in the year. But yeah, the Bears are awesome. They have a great young quarterback in Caleb Williams. He's their answer. That's just what it is. I was wrong about him last year coming into the draft. I thought he didn't throw with anticipation that well in USC, but guess what? He's throwing with anticipation now in the NFL, and it's really paying dividends for them. On top of their 7th ranked defense in the league, they're 3-2. That's a really strong team, and they're probably number 1 in a lot of other divisions as well. So good on them. Another team that's doing really good is the Packers, the team that I thought was going to be the number 1 team in this division this year, and they're tied for 2nd. Basically, 3 teams are tied for 2nd in the division, and that's with the Packers at 3-2, the Bears at 3-2, and I'm telling you right now, the Lions are going to win this weekend, so they're also going to be 3-2. They have a lot of good teams in this. On top of the 5-0 Vikings, Sam Darnold, 1st-round pick for the Jets. Now he's doing something for the Vikings. We would never have thought that was coming. Jared Goff's keeping the Lions afloat. I mean, Jordan Love looks like he might be the 3rd best quarterback playing right now, and he's struggling with the ball, with turning over the ball. Next, we got the AFC West. Las Vegas. Look, man, it struggles. I know. Dan Campbell didn't do hot his first year either with the Lions. Now look where they're at. It's called building a dynasty. You're not going to have an overnight success instantly, especially in the AFC West. I mean, you have to go against Mahomes. You have to go against Andy Reid. You have to go against Bo Nix and Sean Payton. You have to go against Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh. You have Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, and you have Antonio Pierce, first-year coach. Antonio Pierce, I believe, is an awesome, awesome coach, probably one of the top 5 coaches in the league. You just got to give him time. His defense is elite. His offense is going to get there. They got to figure it out at some point. And I mean, hey, we'll see what the Raiders do. They're 2-3. I think they're going to beat the Steelers this weekend. We'll see what happens. The Steelers are a good team as well, but I think the Raiders have a chance to really bounce back this week. The Chiefs, 5-0. They shouldn't be 5-0. I'm going to be so honest with you right now. They should not be 5-0. I'm going to say that 3 or 4 times. The Chiefs have the 14th ranked offense, 10th ranked defense. Now look, Mahomes is not playing like Mahomes at all. He's playing like one of the 20th best quarterbacks in the league. He's not playing well at all. He's turned the ball over more than he has touchdowns. Just not doing good. It's not what you want to see from your star quarterback. That's not who you want to pay $500 million to. But hey, Tom Brady had a slump too sometimes, and it just happens. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, still with an off year, is 5-0. I mean, 5-0. That's not even fair. Then you have Bo Nix and the Broncos. People said Bo Nix wasn't going to be good. I disagreed, and I'm telling you, there's a reason for it. Bo Nix is a really good quarterback. He reminds me so much of Jalen Hurts, but with actual fiery passion on the sideline. He doesn't want to sugarcoat anything. Bo Nix is Bo Nix. He's elite. The Chargers are the Chargers. They're doing great. Jim Harbaugh's doing Jim Harbaugh things. Great defense. Run offense. Not really passing the ball. You're not going to do well in the NFL when you're not passing the ball. Next, we have the AFC North, and that is the Baltimore Ravens, the best team in football right now. Yeah, you heard me. The best team in football right now, leading this off. And they're 3-2. Oh, well, the Ravens are a great team. They've lost to the Raiders. They lost to the Chiefs. AFC West teams, that's a strong division too. But hey, the best team in football don't care. It's called running the ball down your throat. Derrick Henry has scored a touchdown, I'm pretty sure, in every single game as a Raven. That doesn't happen just regularly. That's called good coaching, good scheming. The Bengals, their defense is struggling. Yes, we get it. Defense is not doing too hot. But the offense, you have Joe Burrow, you have Jamar Chase, you have T. Higgins, you have Chase Brown, you have Mike Gesicki, you have a good O-line. I don't know how they're losing games. I think Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I thought he was going to have an MVP candidate season. With a record of 1-4, that's not going to happen. But I'm telling you this right now, and I want to see this. Do you think, because I think this, do you think that the Bengals can win 9 straight games? I do. I think the Bengals can win 9 straight from here on out and be 10-4 by the next time we talk about them. So it's not like they're a bad team. They've just gotten weird circumstances, bad play calling at the last second, and questionable kicks. I mean, that overtime against the Ravens, we should be looking at the Ravens right now at 2-3. And we should be looking at the Bengals at 2-3 as well. And they both be tied. But instead, bad play calling and a bad kick at the end of the game loses them that game. And now they're 1-4 and the Ravens are 3-2. Two strong teams losing to teams that they shouldn't, but I think two of the better teams in the league. Next, we're going to go into the predictions for this upcoming week for the winners table. We have the Niners winning. We have the Packers winning. We have the Eagles getting a bounce back win. We have the Bears winning. We have the Chargers winning. We have the Bills winning. We have the Bengals, Falcons, Buccaneers, Texans, Ravens, Raiders, and Lions. Yeah, that's who I think is going to win this weekend. We'll see what happens. I mean, the Raiders, we'll go into a little bit of a breakdown of all of them too. The Niners, they are a team that is just way beyond what their record shows, and they should be a lot better. The Packers, NFC North team, they should also be way better than what their record shows. I don't think they're going to lose a lot of games. Eagles, man, this is a frustrating team to figure out. They don't have that good of a passing offense right now without A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith should be coming back, though, in Week 6. So we should see what happens with them. I think they're going to blow out the Browns. Just what I think. The Browns are one of the worst teams in the league. The Bears, hey, Chicago, you're going to finally start bridging that gap between wins and losses. Good job. I just think that team's a really good team with a big defense and young quarterback, of course. Harbaugh's Harbaugh. That's all I need to say on that one. The Bills are the Bills with Josh Allen, MVP candidate. They're not going to lose a lot of games. The Colts, they're the Colts, man. They are a good team with Joe Flacco. They got Jonathan Taylor. I think he's going to be coming back this week. If not, I might be mistaken, but still, that team's good enough with its receivers to beat a lot of teams in this league. Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield's rejuvenated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And with everything going on in Florida right now, prayers out to everybody going through the hurricane. Please stay safe with Hurricane Milton. We don't want you to get hurt. Hope everything went well. But Baker Mayfield is going to show out for them. I really believe that this weekend. Baker Mayfield's one of those type of guys, very heartstringy type of guy, plays with his emotions a lot, and I could see them really blowing out whoever they go against, no matter who it could have been. It could have been the Chiefs, Vikings, Ravens, anyone. I would have put the Buccaneers up here. Texans, C.J. Stroud is terrifying, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, if not top 3, in my opinion. Ravens are the Ravens. Raiders, look, I shouldn't probably give the Raiders a win this week. They have struggled to stop the run. Christian Wilkins is injured IR for indefinitely. We don't even know when he's coming back. Man, the Steelers are a good run-heavy team too. I just don't think the Raiders are going to let this one slip. I really don't. They need to bounce back. Aiden O'Connell is going to be taking the helm this weekend. He's starting quarterback. Gardner Minshew's not expected to come back this year. We'll see what happens with them. The Lions are a really, really good team. I mean, they're going to run all over you. David Montgomery, you want to get a free bet this weekend? Bet David Montgomery to score a touchdown. He keeps on doing it. He does it every week. The Falcons, they're a good team as well. They struggled in the beginning of the year. Kirk Cousins didn't look like Kirk Cousins. I mean, I'm not a Kirk Cousins guy either, though. So he didn't do too hot in the beginning. Started to bounce back. Finally looks like an actual good quarterback. I believe he surpassed 500 yards for the first time in Falcons history. That's pretty crazy to see from a quarterback. But if he can keep doing that, keep distributing the ball to Bijan, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London, that team should blow teams out. Those are 3 generational talents on the offensive side. You give me a decent quarterback like Kirk Cousins is, and you're going to beat a lot of teams. The Bengals, of course, I'm not giving up hope. I believe Joe Burrow is going to win games. I believe Jamar Chase is going to win games. I believe T. Higgins is going to win games. And that's just what I believe in with them. That's basically it with me today. We're going to be going through the rest of this year. It's going to be a fun year. Stay with us. We're going to have 30-minute episodes every Saturday 8 to 9 a.m. I'm your host, Chris the Moose Johnson. Thank you guys so much for watching again. Thank you for staying tuned. Shout out to Will Lewin, shout out to Kyle Sparrow, and shout out to Jake Gruel for all coming in and doing their part this week. It was a great week, and we'll see you guys next time.